Hello, everyone. My name is Holly Sullivan, and I had the opportunity to teach a hybrid class earlier this summer for our MBA program. This was an MBA marketing class, and it was very heavily focused on discussion and lecture. So we utilized a lot of PowerPoint and not a lot of whiteboards. So as I share a couple of tips with you today of some things that I picked up along the way, this is definitely for a more discussion-based class. I believe that the CTE will be providing some resources for utilizing whiteboards and how to incorporate that into your hybrid classroom. So what I want to focus on today is all about the classroom connection. How do you get your students in class to be connected to your students that are online? How do you make sure that the online students don't feel left out? That was certainly something that we had to figure out. We had a couple of weeks to do this. An MBA course in the summer is about 6 weeks. And for the first 3 weeks, we actually met via Zoom completely. And then those last 3 weeks is when we were able to start this hybrid method. So here's a few tips and tricks that I picked up. I hope that you find them helpful, and I can't wait to hear what you all have learned along the way as well. So I want to make this very simple in the format of ABC. So I'm determined to convince you, it's part of the marketing person in me, I guess, to convince you that this truly is as easy as ABC. We do face some challenges over the next few weeks as we prepare for the fall semester, but I have complete confidence that we will be able to tackle this just like we did in the spring. So the first thing is A, and A is for audio. Making sure that you turn your audio and video on as soon as you get into your classroom, whether you have 10 minutes before class starts or you have 2 minutes before class starts. This probably seems kind of obvious, but the very first night when we were bringing the students into the classroom again, I really wanted to focus on making sure that they were all set up, that they were socially distanced, they had been checked at the door for temperatures and all of that. And so I was just excited to get them in the classroom and to actually be back in the classroom with real people. And so what I did was I turned off the audio and video for the online group so that I could get everyone in class squared away. And then at 6 p.m., we could hit the ground running, bring everyone together. That was a horrible idea. It worked out fine, but what I had done essentially was completely block the online group from any of that conversation that happens at the start of class, right? You know, whether it's about the course material or the final project or just what someone had done over the week. The online group missed that completely. They were just staring at a black screen until class started. And I had done that because in my experience over the spring semester, it seemed like students didn't really pop on until right before class started. But I found, especially with this hybrid method, that students were getting on a few minutes earlier. And I think it's because they knew their classmates would be in the classroom and they wanted to participate in that. And so after that first week, I corrected that mistake and made sure that whether it was before class started, whether it was on our breaks that we had, it was a 3-hour night class, so we did have a few breaks, or even at the end of class, I would not cut them off until all the students had left the Zoom session. Make sure that they have just as much access to you and to their classmates as if they were in the real on-campus session. That was one of the easiest ways. Once I realized the mistake, that was a very easy way to keep everyone connected. Of course, if you have a classroom that's set up with a camera that can show the students, that's another tip here as well. They really enjoyed getting to see everyone. So the online students could see the on-campus students and vice versa, especially during discussion. I would kind of toggle back and forth. Lecture, I would share the PowerPoint, and then for discussion, I would share everyone's faces so that they could all see one another. So if you do have the capabilities, definitely recommend letting both groups see each other, but make sure you have the audio and video turned on, because that was really a simple fix, but it did help them to not even just interact with me, but interact with their other classmates as well. The next tip is breathe. So that is our B word. That means breathe right now in this moment, absolutely, but also as we get into the classroom in the fall when a technical issue arises. The hard part, in my view, was back in the spring when we had a matter of days to take all of our classes and put them online and learn Zoom and deal with, working from home and family was around us, or your cats and dogs were jumping into the screen, or all these different distractions. And we did that. And I think that we did it well. And so I truly believe the hard part is behind us. We do face some interesting challenges and opportunities over the next few weeks and months, but we can do this. You've already figured out how to use Zoom. You've got this. So take a deep breath as we gear towards the fall and we look towards the fall. We know more than we think we do, probably. We're ready for this. We're more equipped for this than what we think. But also, when you get into the classroom, something's going to go wrong, right? We have wonderful resources and wonderful IT support and really everything that we need here on campus, which is a lot easier to handle than when you're sitting at home, in your home office or your living room. But even with all of that, it just happens, right? Things will occur. And we ran into that on our very first night. And of course, I've shared, the excitement at getting to be back in the classroom. I was excited. The students were excited. Even the students online, you could tell there was a little bit more interaction and enthusiasm because it was getting back to normal. And within the first 30 minutes of our lecture, the students started putting in the chat that they couldn't hear me. So of course, it was easy to be frustrated, overwhelmed, and think, okay, the speakers aren't working, or the connection's wrong, or something's going wrong, and I can't fix it. I don't know what I'm doing here. But instead, I took just a quick second, 2 seconds out of our lecture, and I responded back to the students and said, okay, what's going on? Why can't you hear me? When does this happen? Or tell me what you're experiencing. Is everyone experiencing this? And sure enough, it was because I tend to pace when I teach, and I was walking too far away from the mic at the TEC. The way that this classroom was set up, the TEC and the camera were all very close together. So I was walking farther away from that camera, that mic, and I would start to echo. So a very simple fix there. And we learned on that first night, if students were coming up to present, they would need to be closer to the microphone. Makes sense. It was very simple, but in that moment, it could have been very easy to get overwhelmed. And as we've already discovered, the students read off of us, right? If we're positive in the face of all of this, then they tend to be a little bit more positive. And so I would just really encourage you to take that deep breath and, understand that yes, some of these things are going to happen, but as long as we stay positive about it, the students will too. Using that grace and that understanding that we've had to practice over the last few months certainly helps. And of course, not every technical issue will be that simple of a fix. And I understand that, but it's just easier if we can pause for a moment, make sure the students know, this is okay, use a little bit of humor, and then continue forward, and it works out just fine. And for our C, that is chat. So the chat will be your best friend. And you've probably already discovered that in your spring classes. Honestly, I really enjoyed the chat in the spring because finally those students that were so quiet and didn't really want to speak up, they felt more comfortable and they were getting more involved. And we would have such good discussions that were coming through the chat, and I would try to moderate those as well. Truly, I felt like some of my classes I bonded with better in the Zoom environment than I had in the classroom environment. And I feel like I picked up a few tips for how to carry that over into the classroom, because I know we all want to be back in the traditional classroom. And so the same goes here in this hybrid format, especially for discussion. I would always set the chat to public or to host only. So there is a way that they can talk to each other privately. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't like when students have their phones out or texting, anything of that nature. So I would always go in and set that chat to public, or depending on the class and the nature of the questions, even just to the host, so that I'm the only one that sees it. This worked out really well in the MBA class because it was discussion heavy, and I wanted to really facilitate that discussion. And so I would ask a question or pose a question and let my students in the classroom answer first, because that's easier for them, right? They don't have to formulate their thought and then type it out. And so as we get that discussion rolling, I move over to the TEC. You could also connect to Zoom with an iPad or a tablet so that you can remain moving around your classroom and you don't have to be connected, tied to the TEC. But I would start to monitor the chat and see the responses come in from the online students. And so at that point, I would facilitate and say, Ashley just said this in the classroom, and and I might repeat that to make sure that people at home heard it. And then say, Joe just added this into the online chat, and it really makes that connection, that parallel. So Tim, you mentioned this earlier. How do you think that factors in here? It's just discussion facilitation, and we know how to do that, right? We've done that before. It's important to repeat the names of the people who are talking or the people that you're reading their comments. It makes them feel acknowledged. Also, of course, you're making the eye contact with the camera wherever it might be. You kind of get into that habit of, looking to this side of the room, to this side, and up at the camera. Those are just some really small things that can make that connection, but definitely reiterating the names of the students who are talking, and even summarizing maybe what a student shared in class, especially if there is, based on your classroom where the mics are, if they can't hear them online, then just summarize that, kind of being that middleman. It does mean that there will be some repeating, but that's okay, right? Because you'll kind of get the hang of repeating the really important things that you want them to remember, and that only helps facilitate their learning as well. So I hope that's encouraging. Of course, it's not quite as easy as ABC, but I really think that we're ready for this, and that the hard part is behind us, and there's so much excitement as students will hopefully get to come back into the classrooms and see their classmates online, even if in the first few minutes, especially on that first day, if instead of a PowerPoint you showcase the Zoom screen with everyone's faces in the little boxes and just let them talk to one another and get to see each other. I think that there's a lot of excitement coming into the semester, a lot of uncertainty as well, but a lot of excitement from the students and faculty alike, that will make this a very interesting and memorable one. So thank you for letting me share today, and I can't wait to hear tips and tricks from everyone else.